Skyler Jacobson. Imagine you are a kid playing soccer. You have the ball and you're dribbling it down the field when a bigger kid comes and pushes you down and you scrape your knee. Most people have played a sport, whether it was when they were a kid playing soccer, t-ball, or dance. They could have even played a sport in high school like wrestling or football. Competitive sports are unhealthy. First, I will talk about common injuries in sports, and second, I will talk about the most dangerous sports, and finally, I will talk about how parents can be even harder on their kids than they are. Let's start with some common injuries from common sports. The first injury is a torn meniscus, ACL. The torn ACL is a knee injury that is most often found in football. In the article, 5 Most Devastating Sports Injuries by Matthew Jussum, explains how Adrian Peterson tore his ACL in the 2011 season, but came back to be one of the best in the NFL, scoring or having over 2,000 rushing yards. Some of the common causes of this injury are sudden stops, sudden changes in direction. Some of the symptoms of this injury is you can lose your full range of motion and have pain or tenderness while walking. There's only one way to fix this injury, and that is through surgery. The second injury is a torn meniscus. The torn meniscus is also a knee injury found in soccer. In the article, Torn Meniscus, published by the Mayo Clinic on May 28, 2014, there are 3 tests used to diagnose this injury. The first test is an X-ray to see if there's any other injuries. Second is an ultrasound to see how your knee moves in motion. And the third test is an MRI to distinguish the hard tissue from the soft tissue. The causes of the ACL are also the same in the meniscus. There are multiple ways you can treat this injury. You can use the regular way and do rest, ice, and medication, but you can also do physical therapy to regain the muscle. And if the pain doesn't go away, you will have to do surgery. The third injury is a rotator cuff tear. A rotator cuff tear is a shoulder injury most often related to baseball and tennis. In the article, Rotator Cuff Tears, written in May 2011, Dr. April Armstrong explains that in 2008, 2 million people went to the doctor for a rotator cuff injury. A rotator cuff is what connects your shoulder to your arm. Your tendons can be damaged in many different ways. They can be damaged by injury and by age. They can also be damaged by repetitive motion. Some of these injuries are very dangerous, but the sports are fun to play. Some of the most dangerous sports include football. Football is a very dangerous sport. Football can cause major brain injuries. In the article, Football's Dangerous, Illustrated by One Man's Brain, published by CNN on January 11, 2016, Michael Keck illustrates one way that football can damage your brain. Michael Keck has had over 10 concussions. When he was a senior in high school, his GPA was a 3.8, but by the time he was a junior in college, he had a 1.9 GPA after all the injuries. Michael Keck became seriously depressed and had lots of trouble in school. Wrestling is a very popular sport in our school, but it is also very dangerous. The main reason that it is dangerous is because of the weight loss. Losing 2 or more pounds a week is very bad for your health, because not only are you losing your weight, you're losing muscle mass and water. Some wrestlers even use self-induced vomiting to make a weight class. Some of these sports and injuries are unhealthy and dangerous, but sometimes we only do it to impress our parents or do what they want. Some kids push themselves so hard to be as good as their parents. Their parents say things like, "I was a star, so I expect you to do the same." In the article, Are Competitive Sports Bad for Kids, published on April 28, 2015, Tanya Kornerman explains how some parents set expectations for their children in each game or event. Their parents would say things like, I expect you to get 2 hits tonight, or I expect you to get a personal record. Some kids are even forced to do sports that they don't like. Their parents did the sport, and so they want their kids to do it too. In conclusion, there are many sports that cause injuries and are very dangerous, and sometimes your parents can push you too far. Competitive sports are bad for kids. So the next time you're thinking about going out for a sport or are going to sign your kids up for a sport, think twice and weigh the risks.